Hello, welcome. Right. In this tutorial, we are going to try to recreate a game named Zork. Now, Zork, as you can see here, was one of the earliest interactive fiction computer games. Now, effectively, if you think back, I think this was created, Zork 1 was in 1980. If you think back to 1980, the state of games at the time, right? We're very lucky, we're very spoiled nowadays that we have 4K resolution and, all these fancy things, virtual reality now. I mean, we're living a crazy time. But back then, the best that you got for the graphical capabilities of things, you had Pong, you had Breakout, Space Invaders. A bit later, you had Pac-Man, and then quite a few years after Zork, at least in US and Europe, we had, Nintendo and things like that. But at the time, if you wanted a really immersive experience, that is a story-driven experience, you couldn't deliver it in the way we do today. Like if you look at Final Fantasy or games like that, nowadays it's a graphical feast, right? But back then, no, we couldn't do it. If you look at some of the adventure games back then, Zelda and these sort of things, the first Final Fantasy, I'm not sure when that came out, but it was a long time after Zork, the original Zorks. So, the great thing about Zork and text adventure games, if you're a beginner programmer, is you don't need to worry about graphics, right? Everything's in it would be in a console, but we're going to be using it with JavaScript. But it's all text, so you can just focus on learning the core programming concepts. All of these concepts you're going to learn are going to translate to other games, right? But this is how you start, okay? So, just a disclaimer, I am not a professional programmer, okay? I'm sure there are many more people, a lot of people with a lot more experience than I have, that can tell you different ways of doing things, and so maybe I'm not going to tell you the perfect way of doing things, but definitely it's completely usable, scalable, and it's worked for me, okay? So in real life, I'm actually a teacher, so hopefully that will be an advantage in this. Anyway, without further ado, why JavaScript? Why are we going to use JavaScript for this? Because, for beginners, you can use Python is a very popular choice, right? Python, Ruby, a lot of people say Ruby, and Lua, these sort of, maybe it's a bit more of an obscure one. But we're going to use JavaScript for the main reason that all you need for JavaScript to get things on the screen very easily, all you need is a browser and a text editor. So if you're on Windows or something like that, you can just open up Notepad, type things out, save it as a .html or .js file or whatever you want, and open up in a browser, and it will run, it will work, okay? And that's extremely powerful. Now, in terms of text editors, don't worry too much about it, okay? I'm going to be using Sublime Text, okay? Now, this is Sublime Text 3. It's free to download. It's actually not freeware. I believe they call it nagware, where there's a text box will come up, and I'm sure we're going to see it during this tutorial that will tell you, oh, please register your product. And I will. I guarantee you, I will someday. A free option, you can go to, I believe, let me just go to our browser, atom.io, and this is made by GitHub, and it's very similar to Sublime Text, but it is open source, I believe, and free. Maybe it's not open source. Anyway, you can also use Notepad++, that's for Windows only, I believe. Try and just get something relatively basic. All you need to do is just edit text. These are specific for programming, so if you look here, see it has module exports, and that's red, and class is different, atom is different. This is called syntax highlighting, and this is very powerful, very useful for you to differentiate the different parts of your code, and you can see if there's an error and things like that. So it makes your life a bit easier, but not too easy, because there's a habit of, if you let a program just basically complete your thoughts too often, then as a beginner, maybe you won't know the syntax, you won't learn it. It's that repetition that makes you learn the syntax a bit better. In saying that, for sure, I'm probably going to be going on Stack Overflow at some point in this video to try and look up something, but it's a valuable skill that you're going to be using. So without further ado then, I am going to be running this. So you can see this is my, I've got a terminal here. If you're wondering, by the way, I'm using Ubuntu on Linux. If you have a Mac, you can do similar things. If you have Windows, don't worry. But what I'm going to be doing is running a server with PHP. You can do this with Python. But let me just show you how to do PHP. So if you have PHP installed and on Linux, and probably if you have Homebrew on a Mac, it's as easy as typing in sudo apt-get install PHP. Okay. You just type in PHP capital S, which I believe more than likely stands for server, right? And you type in localhost, host, and a port, right? Like this. So hopefully you can see that. And there you go, you see it started, and we go onto our browser, type in localhost 8000, and believe it or not, the page is loaded, but we don't have anything loaded at the moment, right? So you can also do this. Let me just demonstrate. You can also do this with Python. So you see it tried to loading the file. It's loaded the file, all working. You can also do this with Python. Most Macs, I believe, I think Mac has it. Mac OS automatically comes with Python. I know that Linux does. If not, again, it's just sudo apt-get install Python, and it's very easy. You just do Python little m, which I believe stands for module, simple HTTP server, okay? And you don't put a local host or anything either. You don't need to anyway. And you see it automatically serves to port 8000. So you just go, we go here again. The page will refresh, and you see you serve the page, right? So I've had problems with simple HTTP server in the past. So I'm just going to stick with PHP. If you're a Windows user, you can use this thing called WAMP server. You download that and you can serve your files using this, okay? Which I guess brings me to the question, why would you do this? Why would you run a server on your local machine? Why not just go to your files and open the HTML document you created into the browser? You can do that, and probably with our program that we're going to be doing, that'll be fine. It won't be a problem. It won't be a problem because we're not doing anything too complicated. But it's just a good habit to get into, that when you start programming more complicated things, that start sending off server requests and things, or it's good to emulate the environment that you would be that the program would be running in, right? So the program is going to be running on the internet, so therefore it makes sense to run it for a server, right? Because your local file system is not it's not the same as the internet. Obviously, it just works differently. Anyway, I digress. So what are we going to need then? Let's go to our text editor. So we have an HTML document, if I can say it correctly. So we'll start off, just declare the document, doctype HTML, head tag, and a body tag, right? The essence of any HTML page. And we can give it a title. Let's give it a title Zork. And I guess what we're going to need, two things, right? We're going to need a space to put the text, right? So game text. We give it an ID of game text, and I've done something very stupid, right? So you do not need to put this, okay? Do not do this. You can just put game text, okay? An ID automatically gives this, that you refer to it as this, the pound symbol, right? But do not put it actually in your file. So we have the game text div, and also I guess we're going to need an input from the user, and we can give this an ID of, let's call it something logical, like user input, right? So this would be, no, not body, user input, okay? So now we go to our local host. Let's also just get rid of that. Refresh the page, and you see, wow, amazing, right? We have a text box. Now, we can also do something like, let's give it paragraph tags. Welcome to Zork, right? And refresh the page, and we have a little message. Okay, welcome to Zork. Now, with this input, don't worry about the submit button because we're just going to use the enter button. But with this input box here, I don't know if you've realized, or maybe you've never really thought about it, but if you go onto any website that has forms you fill out, nearly always these forms are going to have text inside it, and when you start typing, the text disappears. Okay, now this is called a placeholder. So we can use that placeholder, you see it automatically is coming up. Placeholder, and we can say, please type your command, ... right? Refresh, and you see, please type your command. And when we start typing, it disappears. Okay? So, nice and easy. Now, I'm sure you've realized right now, we've just got an HTML document and we have a script.js, right? A JavaScript file, script.js here. Now, if I start, you see they're in the same directory. Now, maybe this is obvious, but we'll do this anyway. If I put alert hello, what should happen is it should come up and say hello, right? A little annoying box, if you remember these, spamming your page. Maybe spamming your computer before, maybe your friends, you know, sent you a spam page or something like this. I don't know. Anyway, alert. So one of those big annoying boxes that comes up. We refresh the page, nothing. And maybe some of you are saying, well, obviously, and why obviously? Well, we haven't referenced the script.js file in our HTML file. So to do that, we use a script tag. You can see, again, we got it here, script. Now, you should put script text, so JavaScript, the type. It's not strictly necessary in just if you're messing around as a hobby, but it's good practice to. And src equals. Now this is referencing the script. So because we're in the same directory, all we need to do is type in script.js and close that tag, save it, and whoops, sorry about that. We refresh, and you get this big, annoying, horrible, obnoxious pop-up that says hello, right? So we know it's working, we know we've referenced the script and it's all working fine. So now we are going to be using, in this tutorial, we're going to be using a library, and I'm sure you might have heard of it before, called jQuery. Now jQuery is highly useful in the sense that, imagine we want to select the user input, right? Because we want to get the information out that they put in. Right, so imagine you type in go north, you want to check what they've put in, and then you continue the game, right? You continue the story. Now, with vanilla JavaScript, you can do that, it's no problem. You would do, for example, var input equals document dot get element by ID, and you would type in the ID. So what do we put here? User input, right? So you type in user input. Now, with jQuery, the reason why it's so useful, not input, is that this entire thing here, document.getElementById, by ID, can be expressed like this, right? So you can see it's a lot shorter, it's a lot easier. It also comes with a lot of methods. If you don't know what a method is, it's kind of just like commands that you can call on something. So like to uppercase would turn all of the text to uppercase, to lowercase, etc., etc. There's a lot of methods. But there are a lot of methods you can call with JavaScript that just make your life so much easier if you're going to be manipulating the web page, right? It's still very relevant. It's kind of getting a bit out of fashion because there are other frameworks and things at the moment, but don't worry. So now, the problem is we need to include jQuery, okay? Because if we just put this now, the console will log an error saying, what the hell are you doing? What is this? What is this $? What are you doing? Please tell me. Okay, it will not have a good time. So what we need to do is we need to go get jQuery. Now, I believe it's code.jQuery. You can see I've cheated, I've been on it before, been on it many times before. Right, CDN, I believe CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. I believe, right? So you see here we have jQuery 3, 2.1, right? Uncompressed, minified, slim, lots of options. Let's just go for minified. Now what you could do is you could right click, save link as, and save that file into your directory. That way you can work offline, or you don't have to worry about it. If you're going to be hosting, if you're going to be uploading this to your own website, your own hosting, you definitely should download this and upload it to your own hosting. So therefore, you're not relying on someone else's web server to be up, etc. Right? But because this is just a tutorial and we're just messing around, and I don't want to keep downloading jQuery to my computer, what you can do is copy link address, and you can reference that. So go to your index.html script, and source equals that URL. Okay. Now, I inadvertently have introduced an error. Now, I'm sure you know this already, but a computer program will read from line 1 to the bottom. Okay, so what's going to happen is it's going to go down here, it's going to look, okay, so we have game text, okay, so we have user input, and it's going to, okay, we have script. It will go to script and look, and it will see, it will understand this, because this just is normal JavaScript. Then it'll get to input, what is this, right? And it will get confused, even though we have referenced jQuery. But the problem is, we've referenced jQuery after we have referenced our script. Okay, so we need to put JavaScript, to put jQuery before any reference to jQuery. Otherwise, the computer will get confused because it doesn't know what we want. A computer, unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, it cannot read our minds. So we do this, and let me just comment out input, right? And we go here, and to be honest, nothing interesting is going to happen. Okay, but look at the console, and there are no errors, right? At least. All right, perfect. So with jQuery now, there's a very important thing. So as I just explained, the computer, the browser is going to go from line 1 and down. Now the problem is, because we are going to be manipulating the page, imagine we try to manipulate the page, but the page isn't fully loaded, so therefore that will throw an error. So for example, we want to get the information from user input, so the program tries to access user input, but because the page hasn't loaded, it will throw an error. It won't find it, won't find what it's looking for. So to avoid that, I mean, that's the reason why I put the scripts just before the closing body tag, so it will be the last thing to load. So technically the page would have loaded before. There are other ways of doing it nowadays. I believe you could put it in the head and you add a special code, which I think is async, like that. But just for the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to leave the scripts at the bottom just before the closing body tags, okay? So with that in mind, any code you want to execute that's going to manipulate the DOM, the display object model, the website, right, the main body, the page, should be wrapped in a special function. Yeah, right? A special method even, sorry. So document, now note here, right, we have, we've used quotation marks. With document, you do not do this, okay? That is very important. Document.ready, so naturally, this is waiting for the page to be ready. And inside this, right, you're going to put a function. Now, jQuery has this all the time. It always has what we call a callback. So a callback is effectively a function inside a function. So you're passing a function as the parameter of a function or method. Okay, so maybe I've explained it terribly, but you have ready, okay, and in between these brackets, you have another function, okay? So as a parameter, as an argument, you have a function. So what will happen is when the document is ready, right, this function will execute. So in between these two curly braces, this code will execute only when ready. Is ready, right? So because this, for example, is not actually doing anything, it's not manipulating the DOM, you can have this, you can reference anything you want outside of this function. It'd be no problem. Maybe that's what you want to do, maybe that's not what you want to do. But any code you want to execute that's going to manipulate the DOM needs to be within the ready method. Okay? So what are we going to do then? Well, it'd be nice, like I said, that we take the user's input and we do something with it. So we have here input equals user.input. Now, what we need to do is we need to actually get the value of that input, okay? Because right now we've just referenced the tag. So literally we've just referenced this. No, we haven't. We've referenced this, okay? But what we want to do is reference what the user has typed in, right? So with jQuery, there's a very easy method called val, okay? Now, without any arguments in the method, val will return the value that is contained within whatever you have referenced. So we have referenced user input, and val will return the value that is contained in it. If you wanted to change the value that is there, you can put that as an argument. So imagine at the moment you have something, okay, you have the input and you have hello. You could update that, say goodbye, by running this, okay? But we don't want to do that. We just want the value of that. Now, putting it here is going to be redundant, okay? Because if we just put, okay, input equals user input.val, this code will be run once. When it loads, it will run that. So it's always going to return what the value was of the form when the page loaded. So it's always going to return null. It's going to return nothing, right? So we don't want that. We want, when a user has entered something, we want to then get that value. So normally that happens when you have a submit button and you click submit, right? The user will click submit, and then we can check what value that is, okay? Now this is called an event listener. So ready is listening for the event of document being ready, and then when it is ready, it will then execute this function. We are going to do a similar thing where we are going to listen for the keyboard input, okay? So document, again, document is the entire page. The event listener is key pressed, okay? Key pressed. So whenever there is a key press on the page, this function or whatever we put in as the callback to this will be executed. So we need a function to be executed when a key is pressed, okay? Now, I believe we could do something like this. Maybe my logic is wrong here, but I think we could just do this. So you refresh the page, Maybe, hold on a second, what have we done wrong here? Check the, we've done something wrong here. Key pressed is not a function at, interesting, key pressed, is it key press? My love of grammar. Yes, sorry, key press, right? I was thinking too logically about the event listeners, right? So anytime I press a key on my keyboard, it's going to say hello. This is not particularly useful, right? But you can see how we're getting somewhere. So what we want to do is we want to wait until the user presses enter on their keyboard. When they press enter, then we want to get the input from the input box, from the user input box, right? So how we do that is the key press method will return what key is being pressed, okay? So it returns it as such. You have the callback, and here is where the key enters our function, okay? So don't worry if you don't quite understand what I just said. Just basically memorize that this is an event listener, this is a callback, and the key press method will return the key via an argument in a callback. So function parentheses key, okay? Now, logically then, if you put in alert and you put in key, you might be inclined to think that what's going to happen is it's going to return the letter of the key on your keyboard that has been pressed, right? Well, let's have a look and see what actually happens. You can probably tell by my tone of voice that it's not going to quite go to plan, right? So you press a key and it says object, object. Key, object, object. Now that's because it's returning just the object itself, which has multiple properties, okay? Now the key, what we actually want is we want to know which key it is. We want to know the name. So it could be key.name, it could be one of these things. However, whoever designs this method, they have chosen .which, okay? Key.which will return what key has been pressed. So imagine then if I press the E key, what do you think is going to return? Right. Okay, so I'm going to press E. It returns a number, 101. What about enter? 13. Okay, what about up? Oh, they're not valid keys, sorry. Space, 32, A97. Right. So what is this? Well, excuse me. So what happens is, all of the keys on your keyboard are assigned a number, okay? An ASCII value. So when a computer takes in key presses, it's actually translating it to numbers, okay? It doesn't understand E or whatever, it's a number. So every key, including uppercase and lowercase, they all have a different ASCII value, a different number, okay? And these are expressed, so 101, A is 97, etc. Okay, now what we want is enter, 13, right? So we need an if condition. If key.which is equal to, now remember, we can't do enter, okay? That won't make any sense, but is equal to 13. Hold on, I've done something bad here. Excuse me. It's all gone to pot. Right, if key.which is equal to 13, then, and only then, are we going to alert hello. Right? If key.which is equal to 13, as in it's equal to enter, then it will alert us with hello. So, we're on the page, W, Q, E, R, T, enter, hello. Okay, so it's working. And the problem is, okay, so I type, and I press that, and that's good, right? It's listening for the event of enter, but the problem is, it's not really a problem, but I guess, I mean, for example, here, okay, enter, it works. But you see the focus is on the box. If I'm now clicking here, so the focus is here, I press enter, it still works the same. So maybe that's what you want, maybe it's not, for me it's not. So what we need to do, if I can remember the correct method, is we need to check if the user input, tag, the input tag, if it has the focus. I genuinely cannot remember exactly what it is, so we might have to go on Stack Overflow in a second. Is it .focus? No. I believe it's .is focus. So before I start teaching you anything, let's just go make sure that I'm actually correct. It would seem I'm not correct. So look at the console and it should, well, it has nothing here. Okay, so let's go to Google, jQuery, focus, or jQuery check, how to check, I cannot type today, how to check if input has focus. You can see I've looked it up before. Excellent. Using jQuery to test if an input has focus, Stack Overflow. All right, let's have a look. I believe is, oh, so close, look. Oh, I missed the colon. Okay, because obviously he's checking for the CSS tag of focus. Oh, God, that hurts. Okay, so you can see programming at times, it's just as simple as sometimes you miss a colon, a semicolon, you put a dot instead of a comma or something, Anyway, we need this. We need is focus. That's also why it didn't return an error, because there was no error. It was looking for is focus, but it wasn't looking for is colon focus. So it wasn't an error. It just wasn't doing what we were asking it to do, or what we wanted it to do. It was doing what we asked it. So now, hello, enter, okay? So we take away the focus, press enter, and nothing. Perfect, okay. So we have the value here. Now, again, let me just prove this point. Or hopefully prove this point. Input, right? So the input variable is here. We defined it here. Now, because we define this up here, I believe what will happen is there you go. It returns nothing. So even though we have said, please, when I press enter and when I have focused user input, please return the value. In fact, I'm going to replace the input. We're going to put it as value, okay? Now, even though we have said, okay, again, listen for a key press. If the key press is enter and user input is focused, then please return the value of user input, okay? The problem is, because we have defined value as the page is loaded, it's not going to update. What we want to do is check the input, the value of the box, at the time that the event is triggered, okay? So if key.which equals 13, okay, that is when we want to check it. So we put it here, okay? So now what's going to happen is, when this is true, it will check the value of user input, and then it will alert us to what that value is, okay? In theory. So let's just test this. Let's put rainbows, enter. Rainbows, okay? You see it has checked the value of what we have and has told us it, okay? So now what do you want to do? Well, I guess we would want to check if it is a valid command. But I think before we start getting onto this, before we start developing the user input, checking the input, etc., what you probably need is to update the game slightly. So the game text at the moment is just welcome to Zork. It'd be nice if we could add some extra text to say, you know, give it a scenario so that we can react to it, okay? Now we could write it here. For example, you are in a dark, cold place and you see a light to the, let's put it in bold so we know that it's important, north, and you hear a sound, you hear the sound of running water to the west, right? So we could do this. You are in a dark, cold place, you see a light to the north, and you hear the sound of running water to the west, okay? So type your command. What we ideally want to do is you type in north, and the user goes north, and then when they type north, we get a new part of the story, right? North, north, okay? So this is the welcome, and when we go north, we want the game to give us the next part of the story. So if we think about how we could do this, you could have a system of rooms. So we have a different worlds. I mean, at the moment, we're just going to have one world with different rooms. So at the moment, it'd be logical that we're in room 0 or room 1, but because we're programmers, we're going to start counting from 0. We're in room 0, and that has a description assigned to it that is then passed to the user. And if the user moves to another room, we will get the description of that room and pass it to the user. Okay? So what we can do is have a object of rooms, excuse me. So var rooms equals, okay, 2 curly braces. Remember, this is an object. Now, the reason why I'm choosing to use an object instead of using an array, for example, is that we're going to have room 1, and then we're going to have different properties of it. So, for example, we're going to have room 1, and then you're going to have the description. Maybe you have some items that are in there. Maybe you'll have enemies that are in there. Maybe you have different options. You have like a whole host of different things, right? So if we have an array is great. It's, you know, as a list. So a list of rooms is logical, but it'll only be room names or descriptions or something, right? It's much easier if we have rooms, room 1, and then the description. So for example, to put that in practice, room 0, make sure, by the way, you're putting this in quotation marks, colon, okay? And we're gonna actually have, now for now we're just gonna have the description. So room 0, and that will reference the description that we just had. So let's copy and paste this. Okay. So welcome to Zork. Save. Script. Room 0. And let's just leave it like that for a second, I suppose. Right? Room 0, you're in a dark, cold place. Blah, blah, blah. Okay? In fact, what I'm going to do is, because this is going to drive me crazy if not, if you want to break sentences, strings in JavaScript, I believe you need to do a backslash, and then you can do it. I believe if you don't have the backslash, then it will throw an error, okay? There's a complicated reason that I don't think we need to go into it. To do with semicolons, I think it's automatic semicolon placement. Anyway, just remember that if you want to break up your lines so it's easier to read, make sure that you put a backslash. Let me just make sure that I'm not talking shit. And let's quickly look at the web page and look if we got any errors. We don't for now, okay? Anyway, perfect. Okay, room 0, you're in a dark, cold place. Now when the page is ready and the page is ready, okay, we're gonna go to room 0, and we're gonna take the description that is there. So how would we do that? Well, another great jQuery method is, so remember, we want to select game text and append, okay? Append. What append does, well, we can just show you here. Append hello, okay? Refresh. Welcome to Zork, and you see hello. So what happens is, maybe you can see that it just lags slightly before it appears. Ignore this. It's my Twitter bot. Right, so welcome to Zork, hello. Maybe you'll see that it's got a slight delay before it loads. You see? You see that? Oh, you didn't see it then. But it isn't there automatically, and that is because ready waits for the page to completely load, and then it will append hello. Now what append does, I'm sure it's kind of logical, is it puts at the very end of the game text tag, it will put hello. Now there are other things you can do to update text. For example, .text. Let's have a look at what that does. You see that removes, or not removes, it overwrites anything that's within that tag. So game text.text will replace all text in there with hello. Sometimes that's extremely useful and exactly what you want. In this case, because we're having a continuous story, that's absolutely not what we want. There's also another one you can use, which is, oh, excuse me. The other one you can use is prepend or prepend, which puts it before. Okay, which again, you might want to use it for whatever reason. Maybe for help, I don't know. But we want append. It's most logical because we want the story to continuously go down and update. So we don't want hello, we want the room description. So what you can do is go rooms, and then there's two ways you can do this. You can do .room 0. Okay, refresh. You are in a dark, cold place, you see a light, blah, blah, blah. Or you could do rooms, square brackets, quotation marks. Okay, very important, those quotation marks for this. Okay, room 0. And you see exactly the same result. Now, the power of using square brackets is that if you have a variable, so say for example, and we're going to be doing this, we want to access room 0, room 1, room 2, room 3 dynamically, then you might want to have room and you can add a variable. For example, room, you can add a variable of current room plus 1, for example, right? Imagine. So imagine current room is 0 and it will add 1, so it will look for room 1 instead of room 0, right? Which is something we're going to implement very shortly, but for now we're just going to have this. Okay? Room 0. Okay, So what we want to do is add some more rooms. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly take a break. I'm going to maybe write some more rooms for us to use. And when we get back, we can continue with this adventure. Okay, please join me in the next video. I hope you are enjoying it. Thanks a lot.